My name is Milo Rivers, and I'm 43 years old. I've worn that age like a badge of modest success, but also like an anchor some days. Camille Rivers, my wife of 16 years, matches me in age, though her accomplishments often feel like they eclipse mine. She's sharp, polished, and adored at her firm, Andrus and Wren Designs. People light up when she walks into a room, like she's the key they've been waiting for to unlock their creativity. I've watched that happen dozens of times. Me? I own Haven-Built Cabinetry, a small business that's kept the lights on and even let us travel once in a while, but it's nothing flashy. Nothing that stops conversations. I've always thought of myself as the supporting cast in Camille's life, the guy with the quiet charm and the steady paycheck. And most days, that was enough. So when Camille mentioned the company's exclusive spring gala, this big, black tie event hosted by their president, Lawrence Dayton, I figured it was just another opportunity to do what I've always done, support her. Cheer her on from the sidelines. Let her shine. She said it was going to be held at the Franklin Hall downtown, the kind of place where the marble floors gleamed like they'd never known a footprint. I pictured myself in a suit I'd only worn twice, standing beside Camille in her sleek, tailored gown. She always looked stunning in formal wear, like she'd been born to glide through a crowd with a glass of wine and a polite smile. I'd just be her plus one. The tag-along. The guy with the easy grin and the folded hands. And that was fine. I liked being there for her. I liked seeing her glow. The morning of the gala, I woke up early, nerves buzzing like a low hum under my skin. Camille had already been up, her coffee half drunk and her phone in her hand, scanning emails like a general surveying the battlefield. I watched her for a minute, admiring the way her hair fell across her cheek, the way her fingers moved fast and sure. She was in her element, even at 6:30 in the morning. She caught me staring and gave me a quick smile, more habit than warmth, and said, "Big night tonight. Don't be late." I nodded, even though I'd never been late to anything that mattered. I spent the day at the shop, finishing a custom walnut cabinet for a repeat client. The sawdust felt familiar, the weight of the wood in my hands a kind of comfort. At noon, I paused to imagine how the evening would go. I'd walk in with Camille, nod at her colleagues, laugh at jokes I didn't quite get, and clap politely when someone made a toast. I'd nurse a single glass of bourbon and keep my mouth shut. That was my job tonight. No hammers, no levels, just smiles and support. I was ready for that. At 6, I went home to change. Camille was already dressed, a deep emerald gown that hugged her curves and shimmered under the bedroom lights. She looked like she belonged on a magazine cover. I told her so, and she laughed, a quick, distracted sound as she turned to check her reflection again. I tried to smooth the lines of my suit, feeling suddenly underdressed even though I'd followed her advice to the letter. She leaned in, gave me a soft kiss on the cheek, and whispered, "Thank you for coming tonight, Milo. It means a lot." I nodded, my throat tight with something I couldn't name. The drive to the gala was quiet. Camille stared out the window, her phone in her lap but untouched. I tried to make small talk, about the cabinet project, about a new client asking for a built-in wine rack, but she only hummed in response, her mind already at the venue. I didn't take it personally. This was her night, and I was just along for the ride. I focused on the road, on the way the city lights blurred in the windshield. We arrived at Franklin Hall, and even from the curb, I could see it was the kind of place where people came to be seen. Spotlights lit the sidewalk, casting gold and white glows over the guests streaming in. Valets in pressed uniforms opened car doors with practiced grace. I stepped out and adjusted my jacket. Camille took my arm, her perfume warm and floral, and together we walked up the steps. She smiled at the doorman like she'd known him for years. He grinned back, tipping his cap, and suddenly I felt like the world was a stage she'd been born to own. Inside, it was exactly what I'd expected, polished marble floors that seemed to stretch forever, a ceiling that looked like a constellation of crystal. Waiters in black vests carried trays of drinks, weaving through clusters of men in sharp suits and women in designer dresses. A string quartet played softly near the bar, their music floating like a warm breeze. Camille's coworkers were already gathering, glasses raised, eyes bright. They spotted her and swooped in, all smiles and cheek kisses. I stood back, hands in my pockets, letting her shine. That's what I was here for, after all. Just a plus one. Just a tag along. But as I watched her laugh and talk, I wondered if she saw me at all. If she'd introduce me, or just let me fade into the background like a ghost. She caught my eye and waved me over, her smile bright but a little forced. I walked to her side, nodding politely as she made the rounds, but no one really looked at me. I was the husband, the cabinet guy, the plus one, the man who'd walk out of here at the end of the night, slip off his jacket, and wait for her to tell me how it all went. And that was fine. Really, it was. I'd built my life around supporting her, and I'd never wanted to take her place. But something in her eyes tonight felt different. Like she'd been waiting for this. Like she'd stepped into a world that didn't have room for me anymore. I tried to ignore it. I tried to focus on the music, the way the lights danced on the glasses, the scent of fresh flowers drifting through the air. I was just a plus one, right? Just a plus one. And for now, that was enough. Camille had been under pressure for weeks. More than I'd ever seen in the 16 years we'd been together. Every evening, she'd come home with that forced smile, her lips tight and her eyes dark like a storm behind glass. She'd kick off her heels, drop her purse by the door, and give me a mechanical kiss on the cheek, like a ritual we were both too tired to question. Andrus and Wren Designs was a prestigious firm with a reputation for being both cutthroat and innovative. They designed everything from luxury hotels to state-of-the-art workspaces, and Camille was their shining star. She'd been headhunted 2 years ago by the CEO himself, Lawrence Dayton, and she'd risen faster than any of us expected. But this year was different. They'd hired a new VP, Blair St. James. And I'd heard her name come up more often than I'd heard my own. Even in our own home, Blair St. James was a name that carried weight, even in the construction circles I moved in. She was the kind of woman who walked into a room and made every other conversation stop. Word had it she could kill a deal with a single glance, or make a career with one well-placed compliment. Camille idolized her in a way that made me uneasy. She'd talk about Blair the way some people talk about celebrities, her voice filled with admiration and a trace of fear. "She's brilliant, Milo," she'd say as she scrolled through her phone at night, half listening as I talked about a new cabinet design I'd sketched that day. She knows what it takes. I'd nod and pretend to understand, even though I couldn't remember the last time Camille had called me brilliant. As we drove to the venue that evening, the silence in the car felt heavy enough to buckle the doors. I glanced at Camille, hoping to catch her eyes, but she was staring straight ahead, fingers tapping a restless rhythm on her clutch. The streetlights slid across her face like spotlights on a stage, highlighting the tension in her jaw, the shallow rise and fall of her breath. I wanted to ask if she was okay, but I knew better. Camille wasn't the type to talk about feelings before an event like this. She needed to stay composed, to hold that mask of perfection in place for just a few more hours. We pulled into the Franklin Hall valet line, and Camille gave the attendant a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. He opened her door like she was royalty, and she stepped out, adjusting the strap of her emerald dress with a practiced grace. I climbed out on my side and joined her, offering my arm. She hesitated a split second before taking it. That pause felt like a crack in the foundation of the house we built together. But maybe I was imagining things. The venue itself was a marvel of architecture, marble floors polished to a mirror's shine, a vaulted ceiling that seemed to disappear into shadows lit by elegant chandeliers. A string quartet played something soft and expensive sounding near the entrance, and the smell of lavender and citrus drifted from hidden arrangements tucked between white linen tablecloths. People in tuxedos and designer gowns milled about, glasses of sparkling wine in hand, their laughter echoing off the stone columns. I tried not to stare at the wealth on display, but it was hard not to feel out of place. Camille's co-workers descended on her the moment we stepped through the door. Glossy smiles, air kisses, perfectly rehearsed greetings that reminded me of scripted lines in a play. They all looked the same, slim, manicured, eyes bright with ambition and something sharper lurking underneath. They said all the right words to her. "You look amazing, Cam." Blair's so impressed with the March project, Dayton can't stop talking about your design concepts. But when their eyes flicked to me, it was like I was invisible. Or worse, like I was a prop she'd brought along to complete the picture of her perfect life. Camille's fingers tightened on my arm just once, like a reminder that I needed to be on my best behavior. I nodded, offering polite smiles and murmured greetings, but I felt like a ghost. They didn't ask me what I did or how I was. They didn't ask anything. I was the plus one, the accessory, the man behind the woman. I spotted Blair St. James near the bar, holding court with a small cluster of people who leaned in like sunflowers to her son. She was as striking as Camille had described. Tall, with a cascade of silver hair that looked deliberate, her makeup flawless, her posture straight and commanding. She turned her head slightly, catching sight of Camille, and a slow smile spread across her face. It wasn't warm. It wasn't even polite. It was the kind of smile that said, "I see you. Now prove you're worth seeing." Camille's breath caught, just for a second. Then she pulled her shoulders back and led me over to the table with her coworkers, like a general leading a parade. The table was long, draped in white linen, and set with gold-rimmed glasses and tiny name cards in elegant script. I scanned the row of cards, expecting to see my name. Milo Rivers, husband of Camille, polite +1. Instead, I froze. There, in a perfect, flowing gold script, was a card that read, "Idiot Trash." I stared at it. For a full 5 seconds, my brain refused to compute. Idiot trash? My fingers curled around the edge of the chair as laughter sparked around me. Soft at first, then louder, like a wave of broken glass. Camille let out a nervous chuckle, her eyes darting toward Blair. And Blair was smiling, lips pressed together in a smirk that said everything. A coworker across the table, a young man with a perfect haircut, snapped a quick photo and held up his phone. "That's classic," he said, his voice dripping with delight. My face felt hot. My ears rang. I'd known these people for maybe 20 minutes, but I felt like I'd known them forever. The way they looked at me, like I was a bug under glass, something to be poked and prodded for their amusement. Camille reached for my hand, but I pulled it back. I didn't say a word. Not yet. I just lowered myself into the chair, placed my hands calmly in my lap, and forced a smile. It felt like glass on my tongue. This was supposed to be her world, her night, her people. I was just the +1, right? Just the +1. But in that moment, I realized I was so much more than that. And they just reminded me of exactly who I didn't want to be. It was supposed to be a dinner party, not a public execution. But that's exactly what it felt like when I stared at the name card in front of me. Idiot Trash, written in fancy gold script like it was an inside joke I'd somehow agreed to be part of. I blinked once, then twice, hoping the letters might rearrange themselves into something else, anything else. But they stayed there, crisp and defiant, reflecting the soft glow of the table's centerpiece candles. My stomach twisted. I'd always known Camille's coworkers saw me as a sideshow act, a harmless cabinet maker tagging along for the free food, but I hadn't expected to be branded. Around me, the laughter spread like a virus. Soft giggles first, then sharper, more pointed laughter, the kind that scrapes along your spine and makes your ears burn. I could feel the heat rising in my face, the tightness in my chest that comes when humiliation crawls up your throat and threatens to choke you. Camille was no help. She chuckled nervously, glancing at Blair as if seeking approval or permission. Blair raised her glass in a slow, deliberate gesture, her eyes locked on mine, a smirk playing at the corners of her mouth like a cat toying with a half-dead mouse. One coworker, a guy with slicked back hair and a too-tight vest, snapped a picture on his phone. I could see the glow of the screen, the way he lined up the shot like it was a prize. "Oh, man," he said, grinning at his screen. "This is going on the group chat for sure." Another woman leaned over, trying not to laugh too loudly, but failing miserably. "This is so Blair," she whispered to her friend. "She always knows how to make a statement." My fingers dug into the linen napkin on my lap, and for a second, I thought I might tear it in half. But instead, I forced my lips into a smile. It felt like lifting 1,000 pounds with one finger. My eyes moved slowly across the table, catching the expressions of the people who were supposed to be Camille's team. Their eyes danced with delight, anticipation, a hunger for spectacle. I was the entertainment for the night, and they'd paid for front row seats. Camille shifted beside me, her voice a thin thread of forced calm. "It's just a joke, Milo," she said, leaning in, her perfume too strong and suddenly cloying. "Don't overreact. Blair has a quirky sense of humor, that's all." But her eyes, God, her eyes told me everything. They darted around, checking the faces at the table, scanning for judgment. She wasn't defending me. She was making sure I didn't ruin her night. Blair's voice cut through the air like a blade. "We're creatives, Milo. We go for irony. You know, subverting expectations." Her words dripped with condescension, each syllable a carefully placed dagger. I wanted to stand up, to flip the table and tell them all exactly what I thought of their brand of irony, but something in me refused to give them that satisfaction. I'd spent my whole life building things, shelves, cabinets, intricate pieces that fit together seamlessly. I wasn't about to let a room full of corporate sharks tear me apart with a single joke. I took a breath. One slow, measured breath that steadied the fire in my chest. Then I did the one thing they didn't expect. I pulled out the chair, sat down, folded my hands neatly on the table, and smiled. A real smile, not the fake one I'd been practicing all evening. A smile that said, I see you. I see all of you. And you can't break me. For a moment, the laughter stumbled. Blair's smirk faltered just a hair. Camille's eyes widened in surprise. The guy with the phone lowered it, his grin slipping. The spell was broken, even if just for a second. I held their gaze, refusing to let my expression crack. Inside, I was screaming at the absurdity, the cruelty, the betrayal of the woman I'd promised to love and cherish. But on the outside, I was stone. The waiter came by with the wine, oblivious to the tension that vibrated in the air like a live wire. He poured a glass for me, his hand steady, his face neutral. I took it, raised it slightly, and clinked glasses with Camille. She tried to smile, but it crumbled at the edges. She knew. She knew exactly what this was, a test of loyalty. And I could see in her eyes that she'd failed it before she'd even tried. I took a sip of the wine, letting the taste roll across my tongue. It was bitter, sharp, expensive. I set the glass down carefully, aligning it perfectly with the edge of my name card. So, I said, my voice calm measured. What's on the menu tonight? Other than me, of course. A ripple of laughter moved around the table, but it was different this time, uneasy, uncertain. Blair's eyes narrowed just a touch. She didn't like that I'd spoken. She didn't like that I wasn't playing my part. Camille leaned over, her hand brushing mine like a question mark. Please, Milo, she whispered, her voice trembling. Don't do this. Not here. Not tonight. Her fingers were cold against my skin, and I wanted to pull away, but I didn't. Instead, I turned to her and met her eyes, steady and unflinching. Don't do what, Cam? I asked, my voice low but clear enough for the table to hear. Don't embarrass you? Or don't embarrass them? Her eyes darted away, and I knew the answer. Blair cleared her throat. Let's move on, shall we? She said, her tone crisp, commanding. No need to dwell on a little harmless fun. We're all professionals here. She picked up her fork and began to eat, as if nothing had happened. The rest of the table followed her lead, plates clinking, conversations resuming. But I could feel the tension like a second skin. I sat there, the name card in front of me like a brand. Idiot trash. It was supposed to be funny, but to me it was a declaration, a line in the sand. And I knew right then and there that I was done playing the plus one. I was done letting them treat me like I was less than the man I built myself to be. I might have come here to support Camille, to smile and clap and play the part. But this was something else. I sat back, watching them, each face a mask, each laugh a dagger. And in that moment, I decided something important. I wouldn't let them define me. I wouldn't let them take my dignity. They might think I was idiot trash, but they were about to find out exactly what that meant. Camille leaned toward me, her breath a mixture of wine and nerves. Her whisper was urgent, like a parent scolding a child in church. They're just kidding, babe. Don't overreact. Her hand fluttered to my forearm, cold and trembling. Her eyes darted around the table, scanning faces, making sure no one noticed her shame at my discomfort. But I noticed. I saw every flicker of her eyelids, every quiver of her lips, every shift in her posture, as if she were ready to shrink under the table. I stared at her, that mask of composure slipping for the first time since we'd left the house. She didn't say, I'm sorry. She didn't say, that was cruel. Instead, she told me not to make it about me, as if my name on that card hadn't been the opening act for the evening's entertainment. As if I was supposed to laugh along and then vanish, a supporting character in a play that starred everyone but me. Across the table, Blair was swirling her wine like a priest offering communion. Her eyes found mine and held them, as if testing my limits. We're creatives, Milo. We go for irony. Her smile was thin, cutting, the kind that slices deeper because it's framed by perfect lipstick and an audience. It's all in good fun. You can take a joke, right? The rest of the table tittered, heads bobbing, eyes flickering back and forth like they'd been trained to do. A polite, practiced laugh. I forced a smile that felt foreign on my face, a gesture that tasted like vinegar. Of course, I said, my voice calm but colder than the ice melting in my untouched glass. I've always been good at taking a joke. The lie settled in my chest like a stone. Because I wasn't laughing. I wasn't even amused. I was hurt, and I was angry. But I'd spent a lifetime learning how to hide that, how to tuck it away behind polite smiles and deferential nods. I'd learned to accept that I was always the plus one, the extra, the guy who showed up to clap politely and then fade into the background. I'd thought that was enough. But tonight, it felt like a prison sentence. I leaned back, letting the candlelight flicker in my glass. Blair raised her eyebrows, waiting for me to explode, to make a scene that would justify their label. I could almost hear the script in her head. Oh, he overreacted. He couldn't handle a joke. The same script Camille was reading from when she told me not to make it about me. But I wasn't about to play the fool for them. Not tonight. So I laughed, low and measured. I get it, I said, letting the words roll slowly, like smoke. It's a branding thing. Andrus and Ren loves its irony. I picked up the name card, turning it between my fingers like a delicate piece of evidence. Very on brand. Blair's smirk deepened, her eyes gleaming with the thrill of control. Exactly, she said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. We're all family here, Milo. You understand. Family. The word made my skin crawl. Families protect each other. They lift each other up. They don't label someone idiot trash and laugh about it over dinner. But I bit my tongue and let the silence stretch. I watched Camille's eyes dart around the table, gauging reactions, gauging me. Her fingers drummed an uneven rhythm on the tablecloth, her bracelet clinking like a tiny warning bell. Of course, I said again, softer this time, as if I were agreeing to something unspoken. My gaze drifted to the silverware, polished to a mirror finish, and then back to Blair. You know, it's funny, I continued, my voice casual but edged with something sharper. I've been supplying your firm with custom cabinetry for 6 years. I've built your conference rooms, your kitchen break rooms, your executive offices. Hell, I even installed that glass feature wall in your lobby last year. But I guess the real brand is, I flicked the name card with my finger. This. A hush fell over the table. Even Blair's smirk wavered for a fraction of a second. I saw it. I felt it. The ripple of unease that always comes when the target stands up, even if just with words. Camille's lips parted, her face pale. She reached for me, but I leaned away. I wasn't about to let her touch me, not after she'd let this happen. Blair recovered quickly, her laugh ringing out, too loud, too rehearsed. Well, she said, raising her glass like a queen in a castle. We appreciate your craftsmanship, Milo. Truly. Let's toast to that. Her eyes met mine, daring me to challenge her. I raised my glass, but I didn't toast. I set it down slowly, deliberately. I looked at Blair, then at Camille, then at each person at that table who had laughed at me. I think, I said, my voice steady, I'm done being the plus one. Camille's face crumbled, her eyes wide. Milo, please, she whispered. But it was too late. I decided. My heart was pounding so hard I thought the whole table could hear it. But I didn't let it show. I stood, smoothing the front of my jacket. Excuse me, I said, my tone formal, cold. I need some air. I turned, ignoring Camille's outstretched hand, ignoring the hush that had fallen. Blair called after me, don't be so sensitive, Milo. It's just a joke. I didn't turn back. I kept walking, each step carrying me away from the table, away from the laughter, away from the lie I'd been living. I was done playing their game, done pretending I was okay with being the man behind the woman who couldn't, or wouldn't, defend him. I reached the hallway, the cool marble walls a welcome contrast to the suffocating heat of that table. I stopped, my breath ragged but controlled. My reflection in the glass door was pale, my eyes darker than I'd ever seen them. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I felt awake. Behind me, I could hear the muffled laughter resuming. The dinner would go on. The wine would flow. But I wouldn't be part of it. Not anymore. I'd spent too long letting them brand me with their labels, letting them treat me like a sideshow. But tonight, I decided to walk away from all of it. The dinner, the disrespect, and the company my business had been quietly supplying for the last 6 years. Maybe they'd learn. Maybe they wouldn't. But that was their problem now. I was done being idiot trash. I was done being their joke. And in that quiet hallway, with the laughter fading behind me, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. Midway through dessert, a delicate construction of chocolate mousse and edible gold leaf that cost more than I earned in a day, I stood up. My chair scraped against the marble floor, the sound sharp enough to slice through the murmur of polite conversation. Camille's hand shot out, her fingers catching my sleeve in a silent plea. Milo, please sit, she whispered, her voice tight, a tremor in her eyes that felt like a threat and a cry for help all at once. I met her gaze, saw the panic in her pupils, and knew she was thinking about the damage I might cause. Damage to her image, to her carefully cultivated place in this kingdom of power suits and Art Deco chandeliers. I gently pulled my sleeve from her grasp, feeling her fingers slip away like water. "I'm just stepping out," I said, my voice calm, controlled, each word a quiet rebellion. I smoothed my jacket as I turned, scanning the room until my eyes landed on the bar-polished mahogany, manned by a single bartender in a crisp white shirt. And there, in conversation with a regional partner, stood Lawrence Dayton himself, the president of Andrus and Wren Designs. His presence radiated authority even in the sea of tailored suits and curated smiles. He wore his success like a custom-made armor, each button gleaming with a kind of effortless confidence. I'd only met him twice before, both times during installations my company had done at their flagship office. He'd been polite, gracious even, praising my craftsmanship and talking about how Haven-Built's work had saved them money and elevated their brand. But tonight, he was just another face in a crowd until now. I walked straight toward him, my steps even, my heart pounding so hard it echoed in my ears. Each step felt like it carried 1,000 unsaid words, every slight, every patronizing laugh, every dismissive glance I'd absorbed over the years. Camille's voice called faintly behind me, but I didn't look back. This was between me and the people who thought they could brand me idiot trash and still get the best of my work. Lawrence turned as I approached, his eyes lighting up with polite recognition. "Milo Rivers," he said, extending a hand like a man who just remembered an important connection. "Of course, Haven-Built Cabinetry. Your custom installations saved our Grace and Property budget last quarter. That was brilliant work." His words rang with the kind of practice praise that came naturally to men like him, an appreciation for a job well done, nothing more, nothing less. But for the first time, I didn't shrink under it. I took his hand and shook it firmly, feeling the strength in his grip, and knowing I wasn't the only one with something to lose. "Thank you," I said, letting my voice stay calm, even. "Your team's always been good to work with, at least, they were until tonight." His smile faltered. "I'm sorry, tonight? What's wrong?" I held up my phone, screen aglow with the photo I'd taken earlier at the table. The name card in its perfect, elegant script. "Idiot trash." The letters glared at us, a condemnation in gold foil. Lawrence's eyes darted from the screen to me, confusion flickering across his face. "Ask your VP and her team," I said, my voice low but steady, the words sharper than any blade I'd ever held. "Ask them why they thought it was funny to put this at my place setting. Ask them why they laughed." He stared at the photo, his brow furrowing. I saw the gears turning, the weight of responsibility shifting as he realized this wasn't just a joke gone wrong. This was a potential scandal, an embarrassment that could tarnish the company's reputation. "Mr. Rivers," he began, his voice now edged with concern. I'm sure there's some misunderstanding. Let's sit down, we can talk." I shook my head. "I'm not here to talk it through. I came here tonight to support my wife, to celebrate her achievements. But instead, I was humiliated at her table, by her team, and by extension, your company." His mouth opened, but I didn't give him a chance to respond. I leaned in just slightly, my voice low enough that only he could hear, but firm enough that he'd never forget it. "I'm cutting ties with Andrus and Wren. Effective tonight." His eyes widened, his face paling under the soft glow of the bar lights. "Wait, Milo, let's not be hasty. Your craftsmanship, your team." "My team will be fine," I said, my voice final. "We have other contracts, and now, we'll have more time to focus on clients who respect what we do, and who we are." He blinked, his jaw tightening, his hand dropping to his side. "I'm sorry," he murmured, but the words felt like they were spoken by someone far away. "I didn't know. That's the problem," I said, my tone measured. "You didn't know, and now you do." I stepped back, my heart hammering, but my spine straight. I felt a lightness in my chest, a freedom that came with finally standing up, finally choosing myself over the shadows I'd been living in. As I turned to leave, I saw Blair across the room, her laughter frozen on her lips, her glass halfway to her mouth. Her eyes locked on me, confusion and annoyance warring for control. Camille was beside her, pale and trembling, her eyes wide with disbelief. I didn't stop to talk to either of them. I walked out of that room with my head held high, each step carrying me away from the person they'd tried to define me as, away from the +1 who'd stayed silent for too long. Outside, the night air was crisp and cool, a relief after the stifling warmth of that ballroom. I took a deep breath, the city lights twinkling like distant stars, and felt something in me settle. Something that had been rattling loose for years. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was walking towards something better. I didn't know what it would look like yet, but I knew this. It would have my name on it. No gold foil. No mockery. Just mine. And I was okay with that. Lawrence Dayton blinked, his face a shifting canvas of confusion, disbelief, and something that looked like shock. The kind of look you'd expect from a man whose house had just been broken into, but the thief wasn't there for the silver. No, the thief had come for the truth. "Excuse me," he asked, his voice softer now, almost brittle. A man used to being in charge, caught off guard by someone he'd thought too small to matter. I didn't waver. My hands were steady at my sides, my phone still glowing in my pocket like a smoking gun. I looked him dead in the eye, holding his gaze so he couldn't look away. "Ask your VP and her team," I said, letting every syllable land with the weight of a hammer. "Ask them why my place card read, idiot trash." I felt the words settle in the air, sharp and undeniable, the way the truth always does. His face tensed like he'd just been slapped. I pulled the phone from my pocket, the screen lit with the photo I'd snapped. My name card in gold script, that hateful label mocking me from the linen tablecloth. I didn't have to say a word as I handed it to him. His eyes darted from the photo to me, then to the bustling gala behind us where Blair was holding court, her laughter ringing like a bell over the polished marble. He exhaled, a sound somewhere between disbelief and anger. This is unacceptable," he muttered. But his voice lacked the conviction of a man who'd built his empire on polished smiles and sealed deals. I straightened my back, feeling taller than I'd felt in years. "I respect my wife," I said, the words rolling out of me like a vow I'd been waiting to make. "I came in peace. But now, I leave with pride." I let that sink in, let him feel the finality of it. I wasn't asking for an apology. I wasn't begging for respect. I was taking it. Behind me, the noise from the dining hall continued like a distant party I was no longer part of. Plates clinked, laughter rose and fell, and somewhere, a violin played a piece I couldn't name. But it all felt muted, like I'd stepped through a door into a different world, one where I didn't have to prove my worth to anyone. Dayton's fingers curled around the phone, his thumb brushing the screen as if he could erase the image by smudging it. "Milo," he said, his voice softer now, a note of desperation threading through his tone. "You have to understand, this isn't who we are. We value every vendor, every partner." "Save it," I interrupted, my voice calm but carrying a firmness that surprised even me. "I've been quietly supplying your company for 6 years. My team has worked nights, weekends, and holidays to deliver the best. We've taken pride in every project. And this is what I get in return." I let the silence stretch, let the guilt settle like dust in the air. He opened his mouth, but I didn't give him the chance to spin another polished corporate apology. "I'm not asking for an explanation," I continued. "I'm telling you that your company's name no longer deserves the work I do. I'm cutting ties. Effective tonight." For a second, the mask of the president slipped, and I saw the man underneath, the one who'd built his reputation on deals and handshakes, but maybe hadn't looked too closely at the details. The one who'd let people like Blair thrive because she got results, because she made the company look good, on paper, at least. His jaw tightened, and he nodded once, slow and deliberate. "You're right," he said finally, the words heavy, each one a confession. "You deserve better than this." I nodded, the finality of it washing over me like a cold rain. "Yeah," I said, my voice low but steady. "I do." And then I turned, letting the moment hang like a painting on a wall, and started walking away. Each step felt like a victory, a declaration that I wouldn't be defined by their laughter or their labels. That I was more than a +1, more than the man who showed up to clap politely and then fade into the background. Behind me, I heard Dayton's voice, louder now, sharp as a command. "Blair," he barked. "In my office. Now." His tone was laced with anger and something else, fear, maybe, or the realization that the empire he'd built might have cracks in its foundation. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The hallway was empty, the carpet muffling my footsteps as I made my way toward the exit. I could feel the eyes on me, curious glances from strangers, staff members pausing mid-step, wondering what story they'd just walked into. But I didn't care. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't playing a part. I was just Milo Rivers, a man who refused to let someone else's label define him. I reached the door and pushed it open, the night air cool and sharp against my face. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the evening lift off my shoulders like a burden I'd carried for far too long. I glanced back once, just long enough to see the chaos I'd left in my wake, Dayton striding across the floor, his face set in a hard line, Blair staring after him with wide, uncertain eyes, Camille standing by the table, her hands pressed to her mouth like she'd just witnessed something unthinkable. And maybe she had. Maybe, for the first time, she'd seen the man she'd married. Not the plus one, not the cabinet guy, but the man who'd build his own life, brick by brick, and who wouldn't let anyone, especially her, take that from him. I turned away, stepping into the night, my mind already turning toward tomorrow, toward the work waiting for me, the team that believed in me, the clients who respected me, and maybe, just maybe, toward a life that felt more like my own. I didn't know exactly what came next, but for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of the unknown. Because I'd remembered something important. I was the builder. And no one, no VP, no boss, no dinner table full of fake smiles, could take that away from me. Camille came home hours later. I heard the click of her keys in the door, the familiar rustle of her heels on the tile, the small sigh she always let out when she crossed the threshold of our house, as though home were a costume she could slip off at will. Only tonight, there was no relief in her sigh. It sounded different, strained, almost broken. She stepped into the living room, her eyes scanning the shadows for me. She found me sitting on the sofa, a glass of water in my hand, the TV screen black. I'd left it that way on purpose, a silent room, a place where her excuses would echo without interruption. Her eyes were red, but she tried to hide it by turning away and setting her purse on the entry table. "Why would you embarrass me like that?" she said finally, her voice trembling with anger and something else, fear, maybe, or shame. She turned back to me, arms crossed tightly over her chest, as if she were holding herself together. "You don't understand how that world works." I stared at her, the woman I'd loved, the woman who'd once laughed at my jokes and stayed up with me sketching ideas for the custom cabinetry business we'd built from scratch. But tonight, I saw something different in her eyes, a glimmer of resentment, a thin film of panic. "That world," I repeated, the words like pebbles on my tongue. "The world where your boss thinks it's funny to call your husband idiot trash? The world where you sit there and let them laugh at me like I'm not even a human being? That world." I let the silence hang heavy between us. She flinched, her arms tightening. "It was just a joke," she said, her voice too high, too brittle. "You know Blair, she's always had that sense of humor. It's her way of..." "Of what?" I cut in, my voice sharper than I'd intended. "Of humiliating people who don't fit her idea of creative? Of reminding everyone at that table that they're better than me?" I set the glass down on the coffee table with a quiet clink, the sound more final than a slammed door. "You laughed, Camille. You laughed with them. And then you told me not to make it about me." She swallowed, her eyes glistening. "I didn't mean to." "But you did," I said, my tone softer now but no less firm. "You chose them. You chose to sit there and let them define me. And that's the part one can't just swallow down like it didn't happen." She sat down across from me, her posture rigid, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. "You don't understand," she said, her voice a hoarse whisper. "You don't know what it's like in that office. Every day is a test. Blair, she's ruthless. One wrong move, and you're out. You have no idea how hard I've worked to get where I am." I leaned forward, my elbows on my knees, my eyes locked on hers. "Then maybe I don't belong in your world anymore," I said, each word a quiet detonation in the space between us. Her breath caught, and for a moment, I thought she might cry. But she didn't. She blinked hard, pressing her lips together until they were a thin, colorless line. "So that's it?" she asked, her voice flat. "You're just going to walk away?" I took a slow, steady breath. "No, Camille," I said. "You're the one who walked away. Maybe not with your feet, but with your silence, with your laughter, with your refusal to stand up for me." I stood then, the motion slow but deliberate, like a man reclaiming his place in the world. "I'm done pretending that my place is behind you, waiting for you to remember I exist." Her eyes filled, but she didn't move. "Milo," she whispered, but the word felt empty, like a name she'd borrowed from someone else's story. I turned and headed toward the kitchen, needing distance, needing space to breathe. I could feel her eyes on my back, heavy with things unsaid. But I didn't turn around. I didn't give her the comfort of my attention, not this time. The house was too quiet, the clock on the wall ticking like a slow metronome, each second stretching into an eternity. I gripped the edge of the counter, letting the cold granite ground me. I thought about the years we'd spent building a life together, the late nights, the shared dreams, the whispered promises. But I also thought about every time I'd put her needs ahead of mine. Every time I'd been the plus one, the silent supporter, the easy laugh in a sea of cold smiles. She'd let them call me idiot trash. And she'd laughed. I turned back to face her, my eyes steady, my heart suddenly calm. I loved you, I said, my voice low. I loved the woman you used to be, the one who celebrated my victories, who held my hand when things got hard. I don't know where she went, Camille. I don't know if she's ever coming back. But I can't stay here waiting for her. Her lips trembled, her eyes brimming with tears. But she didn't speak. And maybe that was her answer. I walked past her then, to the living room, my footsteps quiet but sure. I felt a weight lift from my chest with every step, like I was finally shedding the part of me that had let her world define mine. Outside, the night air was crisp and full of possibility. I paused on the porch, taking in the stars above, the hush of the wind. I wasn't sure what tomorrow would bring, what conversations we'd have, what battles we'd fight, but I knew this. I wouldn't be the man who let a single table of suits and a woman too afraid to defend him decide his worth. Her silence was sharper than any insult. But deep down, I think she knew I was right. And in that knowing, in that quiet acknowledgement, I felt something shift. Something that felt like freedom. Something that felt like me. 2 days later, the morning sun streamed through the kitchen window like a quiet accusation. I stood at the counter, coffee in hand, staring at the same stainless steel sink I'd installed years ago with a sense of pride. That sink had felt like a milestone then, a symbol that we'd made it, that my craft could hold its own in a home like ours. Now, it felt like a relic of a life that didn't quite fit anymore. I took a slow sip, letting the bitterness ground me. The doorbell rang, sharp and insistent. I set the cup down and moved to the front door, half expecting Camille to be waiting with another round of apologies or explanations. But instead, a courier in a navy jacket stood on the porch, a small box in his hands. "Mr. Rivers?" he asked, checking the label before passing it over. "That's me," I replied, taking the package. His eyes darted to the name on the label, Haven-Built Cabinetry, and he gave me a quick nod before retreating to his van. I closed the door slowly, the box heavier in my hands than it should have been. I carried it to the kitchen table, running my thumb along the tape, feeling the tension gather in my chest. Camille wasn't home yet. She'd left early for the office, promising a quick meeting that probably meant another round of damage control. I opened the box carefully, the flaps peeling back to reveal a stack of letters neatly arranged, each one on the same creamy Andrus and Wren letterhead that had once represented opportunity and pride. The first was from Lawrence Dayton himself. I unfolded it, the paper stiff and formal. His words were measured, heavy with corporate regret, but too carefully phrased to be personal. "Dear Mr. Rivers, I am deeply sorry for the incident at the gala. What occurred was not representative of our values or our respect for the craftsmanship you and your company have provided over the years. Please accept my sincere apologies. We have initiated an internal review to ensure such behavior is not repeated." I let the letter drop to the table. I'd expected it, some gesture from the top, designed to smooth ruffled feathers and protect the brand. But as I reached for the next envelope, my hands paused, the weight of the moment settling on my shoulders. This one was handwritten, the ink smudged in places, the handwriting rushed but sincere. "Dear Milo, I'm so sorry. I had no idea Blair would go that far. I always admired the work you did for us, and the way you supported Camille. I recorded Blair that night, bragging about the prank. I couldn't let it stand. I've already sent the recording to Dayton. I hope it helps. Sierra." I read the letter twice, my heart pounding. Sierra, Camille's colleague. I remembered her, quiet, competent, always polite to me at events. She'd been at the table that night, her eyes downcast as Blair's laughter rang in my ears. And now she'd taken a risk to show me that not everyone at that firm had bought into Blair's brand of cruelty. A third letter sat at the bottom of the stack. No signature, just a typed resignation. Blair St. James. The woman who'd turned a dinner table into a coliseum. Her words were cold, formal, a lifeline made of stone. Effective immediately, I resigned my position at Andrus and Wren Designs. I regret any actions that may have caused harm to the company or its partners. No apology. No acknowledgement of what she'd done. Just the finality of a signature at the bottom. I let the letters fall into a neat pile and leaned back in my chair. The kitchen felt too quiet, too bright, like the world had moved on without me. Camille would come home eventually, and she'd find the box. She'd read the letters and understand, maybe for the first time, what her silence had cost. A knock at the door startled me from my thoughts. I stood, moving to the hallway, and opened it to find a delivery man standing there, this time with a stack of folders marked Proposal. He handed them to me, his expression professional but polite. "Mr. Rivers? These are from some of the companies that reached out after the gala." I thanked him and brought the stack inside, setting it next to the letters. I thumbed through the folders, each one carrying the logo of a competitor. Design firms, construction companies, boutique architecture studios. Some I'd heard of, others were new. All of them wanted to work with me. They wanted Haven Built's name on their projects. A small laugh escaped me, dry, but real. I'd walked away from Andrus and Wren thinking I might lose everything. Instead, I'd opened a door to something new, something better. My phone buzzed on the table. I picked it up, reading the latest email from a potential client. "Mr. Rivers, we heard about what happened at Andrus and Wren. We'd love to discuss a partnership with Haven Built. Your craftsmanship and integrity are exactly what we're looking for." Integrity, a word that felt like home in my mouth. The front door opened quietly, and Camille's heels clicked on the wood floor. I turned as she entered the kitchen, her eyes puffy, her hair pulled back too tightly. She saw the box, the letters, the stack of folders, and her face paled. "Milo," she started, but I held up a hand, gentle but firm. "Read them," I said. "Read them all." She sat at the table, picking up each letter with trembling hands, her eyes scanning the words. Her lips parted as she read Sierra's note, her face crumpling at the resignation letter. When she reached the proposals, she looked up at me, tears brimming. I didn't know they'd do this," she whispered. You thought it was a joke," I said, my voice calm. "A joke that cost them 3 employees and a reputation." I gestured to the stack of proposals. "And it cost you your place there, too." Her eyes widened. "They put me on leave," she confessed, her voice shaking. "Pending an investigation." I nodded. "Because you didn't stand up. Because you let them think that kind of behavior was okay." She wiped at her eyes, her hands trembling. "I didn't think it would go that far. You didn't think," I interrupted, not unkindly but firmly. "You didn't think about me, about us. You let them decide what mattered." The silence stretched between us like a bridge we weren't sure how to cross. But in that moment, I felt something like forgiveness. Not for her, maybe not yet, but for myself. For letting it get this far. For thinking that being the +1 was all I was meant to be. I stood, gathering the letters and the proposals, stacking them neatly. "I have work to do," I said. "And a team that believes in me." She nodded, her tears falling freely now. I didn't reach for her. Not yet. Outside, the sun was high, the day full of possibility. My company, my name, was stronger than ever. And as I headed to the workshop, I knew I wasn't the man who'd been branded at that table anymore. I was the man who'd walked away and built something better. The house was quiet again, but this time it wasn't the kind of silence that followed a fight. It was heavier. Still, like the air was holding its breath, waiting for something to shift. Camille sat across from me at the dinner table, where we used to share quick laughs and clink wine glasses over takeout cartons and long days. But tonight, there were no glasses. No food. Just her and me and the weight of what we hadn't said. She pushed her plate aside, it was barely touched, and stared at her hands. She wasn't wearing makeup tonight. No earrings. Just a simple black sweater and jeans. Stripped of the designer polish, she looked younger. Smaller. Like the version of her I remembered from years ago, when we still talked about dreams without worrying if they fit into someone else's plan. She took a deep breath and looked at me. "I don't know who I am outside that job," she said, her voice trembling as though she'd never said the words out loud before. "I always thought, if I climbed far enough, stayed late enough, impressed the right people, Blair, Lawrence, that everything would finally make sense. That I'd matter." I didn't interrupt. I just listened. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't rehearsing a pitch or reciting some preloaded defense. She was just Camille, lost, hurt, and finally honest. She looked down again. I spent years proving I belonged in that firm. And somewhere along the way, I stopped defending the parts of me that actually did. Her fingers picked at the seam of the tablecloth. "Like you. Us." I swallowed hard. There it was. It wasn't bitterness I felt, though I'd be lying if I said it didn't flash through me sometimes. It wasn't even anger anymore. What I felt was more complicated. A grief, almost, for the version of us that used to be strong, playful, imperfect, but real. The us that sat on this same table 6 years ago planning the Haven-build expansion, mapping out a life where my craftsmanship and her vision could build something together. We used to have a rhythm, and then that rhythm started to skip. Slowly, at first. Then it fractured completely. You didn't lose yourself, Cam, I said, choosing each word with care. You just stopped defending the parts of you that mattered. Her eyes met mine, full of something raw and vulnerable. I didn't know how to stop it, she whispered. Everything moved so fast. Blair gave me attention. Opportunities. I kept thinking, if I just stayed on her good side, if I just kept performing, maybe she'd make space for me. I didn't realize. I was becoming her. I looked down at the wood grain beneath my hand. I'd carved this table, sanded every corner, sealed every groove. My hands had shaped it over weeks, and now it held this moment like a confession booth. You stood by her while she humiliated me, I said, softly but without apology. That wasn't about business, Cam. That was about basic respect. I know. Her voice cracked. I know. And it's killing me. Tears slid silently down her cheeks. She didn't sob. Camille never cried loudly. Even her breakdowns were quiet, like she was afraid to burden the world with her grief. She wiped at her face with the sleeve of her sweater, but the tears kept coming. I kept telling myself it wasn't a big deal. That you'd brush it off. That you always do, she said, her voice quivering. But when you walked away, when you told Dayton you were cutting ties, I saw it, Milo. I saw who you were. Who I stopped seeing a long time ago. I didn't say anything right away. I wanted to. God, I had so much I could say. But I knew the difference between words that filled silence and words that changed something. So I waited. I forgot, she said, almost to herself, how much strength it takes to stay kind. You've always carried things I never even noticed. You let me take the spotlight while you handled the weight. And I let them laugh at you like you were disposable. I finally spoke. You didn't just let them laugh, Cam. You laughed too. That one hurt her. She winced, her face folding in on itself like a collapsed structure. I was scared, she admitted. I was scared that if I said something, I'd be next. That Blair would turn on me. That I'd lose the life I worked for. You lost it anyway, I said gently. Not to wound her, but because it was true. She nodded, slowly. I know. The room went quiet again, but it wasn't sharp this time. It felt like the silence of something being rebuilt, painfully, slowly. Like we were picking up the same blueprint, unsure of whether we wanted to reconstruct what we had, or sketch something entirely different. I looked at her, really looked at her, not the woman from the gala, not the voice on the phone talking deadlines and drafts, but the woman I met all those years ago at that woodworking expo, the one who lingered too long at my booth because she liked the detail in a cherrywood drawer. She used to believe in detail, in effort. Somewhere along the way, she'd traded that for speed and power. But maybe, it wasn't too late to remember. I don't know what happens next, I said finally. I'm not making promises. Not yet. She nodded again, wiping at her cheeks. I'm not asking for them. I just wanted you to know I see it now. I see you. It wasn't an apology, not in the formal sense. But it was something more valuable, acknowledgement. And sometimes, the beginning of healing isn't in grand gestures, it's in being seen. Fully. Without excuse. We didn't talk about reconciliation that night. We didn't start mapping out how to put our marriage back together. That would come later, if at all. But what we did talk about was truth. About how we'd gotten here. About how we both let something beautiful become background noise. That night, for the first time in a long time, I slept without bitterness in my chest. The hurt was still there, but the bitterness had left. And in its place, there was room, maybe not for us just yet, but for clarity, for dignity, for peace. I never raised my voice. Not once. I didn't flip the table or throw the wine. I didn't give them the drama they expected. What I did was simple. I stood up, walked away from a table that no longer deserved me, and looked a company president in the eye as I told him, I'm cutting ties. That sentence wasn't just about business. It was about everything. Because I wasn't only walking away from a contract. I was walking away from years of being diminished in whispers and polished jokes. From the quiet neglect, the small sacrifices that had piled up like dust in the corners of a house we no longer cleaned together. I walked away from pretending that being the plus one made me less than whole. That night, I chose something else. I chose self-respect. And it was terrifying. It's funny how fast things change once you start saying no. My inbox, once filled with repeat work orders and mild pleasantries from Andrus and Wren's staff, now overflowed with introductions from competitors, proposals with clean budgets, notes from people who had quietly admired my work from afar. The company that once mocked me as idiot trash had done more for my reputation by disrespecting me publicly than years of silent craftsmanship ever had. It was ironic, but also poetic. Camille, for her part, stayed quiet those first few days. Her leave of absence from work became indefinite. Her name, once said with admiration in industry circles, was now paired with the phrase, under review. We barely spoke beyond what was necessary, but there was no yelling. Just space. Time. Reflection. One afternoon, I found myself in the workshop, sanding the edge of a walnut slab, letting the vibration of the machine ease something restless in me. The shop had always been where I thought best. The grain of the wood, the scent of sawdust, it was my rhythm. My center. I paused, ran my hand over the polished edge, and felt the smoothness beneath my fingertips. Clean. Honest. A piece of work that could stand on its own without explanation. That's who I wanted to be now. That's who I'd forgotten I already was. I kept thinking back to that moment, the second I saw the name card. Idiot trash. Written in gold cursive like it was a joke wrapped in elegance. But what hit harder than the words was the reaction. The laughter. The silence from the woman who promised to have my back. And the way I sat there, smiling, not because I was okay, but because I already knew I was leaving. Because sometimes walking away is louder than any protest. I didn't plan to become a symbol, but somehow I did. People from all walks started reaching out. A guy from a fabrication firm messaged me, saw what you did, been in your shoes. Respect. A woman who ran a competitor-designed firm wrote, there's dignity in restraint. Let's talk collaboration. That night at the gala had been their show, but how I walked away, that became mine. It wasn't revenge I wanted. It was clarity. Camille came into the workshop a week later. She didn't knock, just stood in the doorway like she used to before she got too busy for things like this. I didn't look up immediately. I wanted to give her the space to decide what she had come to say. I saw the latest proposal, she said quietly, referring to the one from Maddox Designs, Andrus and Wren's fiercest rival. It's good. They're smart to come to you. I set the sander down and wiped my hands on a rag. They're respectful, I said. She nodded slowly, stepping further in. I used to be. The silence between us held, not sharp, not bitter, just honest. I know it doesn't fix anything, she said, but I wanted to say thank you for not making a scene, for showing grace when I didn't deserve it. I turned to her, really looking now. It wasn't grace, Cam, I said. It was choosing myself. Something I should have done a long time ago. She nodded again, tears welling but not falling. I see that now. And I think she did. Not just the damage, but the quiet strength it took to stand without applause, to leave without slamming the door. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I'd finally remembered who I was before the laughter, before the compromise. The man who builds, who crafts, who holds his name with quiet pride. That night at the gala, I walked away from a table full of people who thought they could define me. But what they never understood was, I wasn't walking away from something. I was walking toward something else. Toward dignity. Toward peace. Toward the version of myself who didn't need a spotlight to matter. And maybe, just maybe, toward a future that belonged entirely to me. I never raised my voice. I didn't break anything. That night, when I stood from that table and calmly walked away, it wasn't anger that drove me, it was clarity. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small or overlooked or second best. I felt grounded. And when I told Lawrence Dayton, I'm cutting ties, I wasn't just speaking to a company. I was speaking to everything that had made me feel like I didn't belong. Camille, the laughter, the name card, the hollow apologies, they were all noise. White noise I had trained myself to ignore for the sake of keeping peace, for the illusion of partnership, for love that had stopped looking like love. But that night, I made a choice I should have made years ago. I chose me. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about making a scene or proving anything to them. It was about self-respect. A quiet, firm refusal to let anyone else narrate my worth. I had spent years standing just outside the circle, building things with my hands, while others build illusions with words. They mocked the simplicity of what I did because they didn't understand it. But they stood in buildings I designed, sat at tables I crafted, and toasted in rooms I built. They couldn't see the value in the hands that built their foundation, until those hands let go. And Camille, my wife, my partner, she saw it too late. Maybe that's the cruelest part. She saw who I was only when I walked away. But even then, I didn't scream or slam doors. I didn't write long speeches or post anything online. I just left, with my dignity intact. And it turns out that silence echoed louder than anything I could have shouted. Now, when I look in the mirror, I don't see the man who was laughed at or labeled. I see the man who walked away. The man who rebuilt himself, not in spite of the insult, but because of it. And as I lay my tools down at the end of the day, sawdust in my palms and purpose in my chest, I know exactly what that moment was. It was the moment I chose peace over pride. It was the moment I remembered who I was. And that, I've learned, is what real love, real dignity, actually looks like. Even if it means starting again. The call that changed everything. It was just another regular Tuesday. The kind where the hours crawl slower than a snail uphill. I was in my office, sipping lukewarm coffee that tasted like burnt cardboard. I was glued to a spreadsheet I had already reviewed 3 times. The hum of the ceiling fan above buzzed like a lazy fly, and my inbox blinked with unopened messages I wasn't ready to face. That's when my phone buzzed on the desk. A name popped up that made me blink. Malik. My brother, and I weren't exactly the kind who called just to catch up. He lived out in Hawaii, running one of those jaw-droppingly expensive resorts tourists fly thousands of miles to photograph. Our conversations were rare, usually reserved for birthdays and the occasional holiday check-in. So a random call from him in the middle of the day? It wasn't normal. I picked up, already expecting something odd. "Hey, little bro," he said, casual as always. "What's up, Malik?" I leaned back in my chair, waiting. There was a pause. "Quick question. Where's your wife?" I blinked. "She's on a business trip," I answered slowly. "In New York. She left Sunday." "Why?" Another pause, longer this time. "You sure about that?" Something in his voice shifted. No longer casual. "Not joking." "Why do you ask?" I said, my voice tightening. "Because," he sighed, "I'm standing in the lobby of the resort right now. And I swear on Mom's good name, your wife is right in front of me. She just checked in. With another man." The room fell silent. I thought I misheard him. "What?" "She's here," Malik said again, lowering his voice. "Barefoot in a sundress. With a guy who looks like he belongs on a cologne ad. And she just paid for the honeymoon suite using your ATM card." I didn't breathe for a moment. My hand froze on the mouse. The coffee suddenly tasted like sand in my mouth. I stared at the monitor, but the spreadsheet no longer made sense. My ears rang. My jaw clenched. But somehow, I kept my voice steady. "Are you sure it's her?" "Positive," he replied. I waved at her. She waved back. The silence stretched again. I rubbed my temple, trying to push away the pounding headache that had just formed behind my eyes. "All right," I said slowly. "Don't say anything else to her. Don't let her know you told me." "You got it," Malik said. "What do you want me to do?" I didn't answer right away. My heart was racing, but my mind was already shifting into something colder. I stood from my desk and walked to the window, watching the wind rustle the trees outside. My thoughts were a storm. Brielle, my wife of 6 years. I met her at a work seminar back when we were still nobodies. She was electric, sharp, confident, the kind of woman who didn't wait for doors to open. She kicked them down. We got along instantly. I paid for her last semester of grad school when her loan got denied. Supported her while she built her startup from scratch. Celebrated her wins like they were my own. And now, she was thousands of miles away, wrapped around another man on a beach, smiling like none of that mattered. I ended the call with Malik after a few more instructions, and I sat down heavily in my chair. I opened our banking app. The transaction history stared back at me like an accusation. $850, ocean view room. $170, champagne brunch. $265, luxury couples massage. $320, catamaran sunset cruise. $2,430, total stolen joy. Each charge was a stab to the chest. Paid with my card. For the past few months, I'd felt something was off. She had started canceling date nights. Always tired. Overwhelmed at work. She'd pull away when I reached out. Dodge conversations with vague excuses. I chalked it up to stress. I didn't press. I gave her space. Turns out, I gave her room to cheat. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I wanted to throw something across the room, but I didn't. Instead, I just sat there. Quiet. Numb. Processing. Because in that moment, I realized something dangerous. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to get even. I wasn't going to burst into Hawaii demanding answers. I wasn't going to storm into her hotel suite and punch the guy in the face. That's what she'd expect. That's what she'd prepare for. But me? I was going to sit down. Think. plan. By the time she realized what was happening, she wouldn't even know what hit her. I picked up the phone again. Called Malik back. Keep watching, I said. Tell me everything. And send photos if you can without getting caught. He agreed. He always liked a little drama, and for once, we were on the same team. Then I called my assistant and said I wouldn't be in the office the rest of the week. I closed my laptop. I poured a glass of whiskey, sat on the couch, and stared at our wedding photo above the fireplace. I remembered the way she smiled that day, the vows she made, how her voice cracked when she said forever. I should have known then. Some people say forever, but they mean until the next shiny thing comes along. I clinked the glass against my teeth. She thought I was a fool, that I'd never find out. But she forgot who I am. She forgot that I pay attention, that I see patterns, that I built my life on structure and precision. She played a careless game in paradise. And now? Now, I was about to show her that betrayal has consequences. And Hawaii was about to become the last place she'd ever forget. Paradise exposed. The funny thing about betrayal is how it doesn't hit you all at once. It seeps in like cold water under a door, slow at first, then soaking everything before you realize you're standing in a flood. That night, I sat in my living room with the lights off, letting it all soak in. The only sound was the clink of ice against glass and the slow creak of the ceiling fan above. I stared at the bank statements again, scrolling through the damage like it was a crime scene report. A couple spa package. Sunset cruise. Room service that could feed a football team. My name on every receipt. My money funding their fantasy. She had taken what we built and used it as a getaway fund for a fling. But I wasn't going to act rash. Not yet. Instead, I called Malik again. Describe him to me, I said, pouring another drink. He chuckled, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. Tall, model-looking. You know the type. Skinny jeans and loafers on a beach, like he's allergic to sand. She kissed him on the cheek earlier. Held his hand. They looked too comfortable to be coworkers. I closed my eyes. He wasn't wrong. I already knew in my gut it wasn't business. Her emails had become vague lately. No more, be back Wednesday, or client meeting at 3. Just one-word replies or ghost-like silence. I told myself she was stressed. That she needed space. I gave her that, and she took it all the way to Hawaii. Thanks, man, I said. Keep an eye on her. Don't let her know you've said anything. Already on it, Malik replied. She booked the stay under your full name, by the way. No shame at all. Of course she did. After we hung up, I sat in silence for a while. I thought about everything. The way she used to wait up for me when I worked late. The way she used to laugh at my terrible jokes. Somewhere along the line, that laughter had faded, and I didn't know when it happened. Or maybe I just didn't want to notice. The idea of confronting her right then burned through my chest like acid. I imagined flying down to Hawaii, bursting into their suite, catching them red-handed. But then I pictured her reaction. She'd probably gasp, cry, beg, deny, maybe even twist the narrative and say I invaded her privacy. Turn it into a story about how I didn't trust her. The victim would become the villain. No, I needed her to be exposed. But not just to me, to everyone. That meant no yelling, no throwing things, no drama, just facts. I pulled up my shared folder from our bank. Every transaction lit up like a breadcrumb trail. I made a new spreadsheet because I needed this to be organized. Cold, surgical. I labeled each entry by date, location, description, and amount. It wasn't hard to tell what was hers. She loved extravagant little things. Candlelit dinners, imported wine, spa facials with names that sounded like they belonged in science fiction movies. And the worst part? It was all billed from my side of the account. I felt like a ghost watching my life from outside. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen island, lit only by the fridge light, drafting a plan. I wasn't going to let her leave Hawaii with a tan and a smile. She'd arrive with betrayal and return with a legal storm. The next morning, I texted Malik, "Can you stall her tomorrow morning? Tell her she's been upgraded or some VIP beach experience. Just buy me time." He replied a few seconds later, "Easy. Consider it done. You cooking something up?" "Yeah," I texted. "I'm done being quiet." Then I called someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Joan. She and I went to college together, and she was the kind of person who could hack into a vending machine and get it to give free snacks for a week. Now, she was a cybersecurity consultant for a law firm and freelanced on the side. When I explained what I needed, she didn't even flinch. "I'll send you a tracker that links to a live purchase log," she said. Give me access to the joint account, and I'll feed everything into a private sheet. Can you match it to GPS locations? I asked. She laughed. You want time, place, and context? You got it. I'll have it by tonight. Thanks, Joan. I'll make it worth your time. You already have, she said. I love a good revenge story. I hung up, and for the first time in hours, I smiled. Because now it wasn't just about the heartbreak. It was about reclaiming control. I texted Malik again. Send me a picture. Just one. An hour later, a photo came through. The two of them standing near the beach bar. She was holding a coconut drink with a pink umbrella. Her hair was down, those expensive sunglasses perched on her head, and her hand resting gently on his chest. I zoomed in. No guilt. No shame. Just smiles. That's when something inside me snapped into place. The man I had been, trusting, loyal, maybe a little too forgiving. He was gone. The man who stood in his place? He was calculating. Focused. I saved the photo and added it to a folder on my laptop labeled Paradise Files. Next, I started gathering copies of all her recent emails and texts. She'd sent the travel confirmation from her work address to his personal one and carelessly CC'd herself. I pulled every digital receipt, every itinerary, every piece of proof. Then I called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. I needed someone licensed in Hawaii. Malik gave me a name, Tony. Civil attorney, sharp as glass, known for taking down big players with nothing but a folder and a raised eyebrow. I emailed her my evidence. 30 minutes later, we were on a Zoom call. I don't just want a divorce, I told her. I want a financial claim. Fraudulent use of funds. And I want her served while she's still in Hawaii. Tony raised an eyebrow. You're not messing around. Not anymore, I said. She nodded. Send everything. I'll draft a claim. When do you land? I hesitated. I haven't booked the flight yet. Well, she smiled. You'd better hurry. Paradise doesn't stay quiet forever. And with that, I closed the laptop, leaned back, and looked at the photo one more time. Brielle thought she was living her best life. But she had no idea I was about to turn her paradise into a courtroom. I wasn't just exposing her. I was preparing to bury the fantasy, publicly, legally, and with precision. And I would be watching every moment of it unfold. My brother, my ally. Growing up, Malik and I were never exactly best friends. We were just two boys under one roof, with different minds and different paths. He liked beaches and breezes. I liked books and balance sheets. While I stayed on the mainland, building a quiet life, he went off to Hawaii and turned a crumbling beachfront property into a luxury resort that made headlines. We didn't fight, but we didn't bond either. At least not until now. Betrayal has a strange way of rearranging loyalties. It was 2 days after Malik's call. I was sitting in my car, parked at the edge of a cliffside overlook just outside the city. The kind of place where you go to think, or maybe to scream when no one's around. I had the ocean in the distance, cold, gray, unforgiving, and my phone glowing in my palm. All right, Malik said on the other end. Here's what I got. He had gone full investigator on my behalf. The kind of effort you only make when blood actually means something. Reservation details are all under your name, he began. She booked the honeymoon suite for 6 nights. Confirmed through your shared bank card. All-inclusive. Champagne welcome. Turn-down service. Ocean view. I closed my eyes. Send me the documents. Already in your inbox, he said. And I've pulled security footage too. Discreet angles. Nothing invasive, but enough to show they're not just coworkers. You sure? I asked, jaw tight. Trust me, he said flatly. She's not talking business. They're kissing by the pool bar. Arms around each other. I even saw them dancing last night at the luau. A knot twisted in my stomach. She ever say anything to you? I asked, wondering if she tried to lie to his face. Nope. Just smiled like everything was fine. Didn't even flinch when I greeted her. She said she was just taking a break from work stress. I didn't let on. Good. And him? I asked. What's his story? Malik exhaled through the speaker. Name's Levi. I asked a few staff members to poke around. Turns out he's some kind of marketing manager at a firm in California. Mid-30s. Works out a lot. Acts like he's God's gift to women. Perfect, I muttered. The cliché of clichés. You want me to do more digging? No, I said. I've got someone else helping on that front. Because I did. Joan. She'd already sent me a Google sheet, color-coded, organized, time-stamped, with every purchase Brielle made using our joint account since she landed. Even GPS coordinates were included. ping from the stores and restaurants she visited. It read like a travel brochure from hell, and every entry had my name on it. My next move was to tighten the circle. I needed more than emotional damage. I needed legal ground. So I called Joan again. "Hey," she said, picking up on the second ring. "Your sheet's updated. You should take a look at row 35. I opened it. Item: boutique jewelry set. Amount: $860. Note: gift wrapped. Signed to my future. Handwriting confirmed to match Brielle. My hands tightened around the phone. She used my card to buy him a gift? Joan didn't answer. She didn't have to. "Keep tracking," I said. "I want every dollar mapped out. I want a full timeline. I want to know what they touched, where they stayed, what they wore." "You're getting dangerous," she said, half amused, half impressed. "No," I replied. "I'm getting smart." After hanging up, I contacted Tony, the civil attorney Malik had recommended. She was sharp, fast, and completely unbothered by the scale of the drama. "I've reviewed the files you sent," she said during our second call. "I can easily build a claim here. Fraudulent use of joint funds, emotional distress, misrepresentation. If you want to press charges or serve her papers while she's still on the island, I can help you file the paperwork within 48 hours. Make it happen. Just be aware," she said carefully, "this could go public." "I don't care." That night, Malik emailed me the video clips. The first one started with soft music playing in the background, one of the resort's live bands. The camera angle showed Brielle and Levi swaying together under string lights, his hands on her waist. She leaned in, whispered something in his ear. He laughed, and then she kissed him, right there, on the dance floor. The same floor where I once danced with her during a retreat Malik hosted 3 years ago. Back when she still reached for my hand in public. Back when she still looked at me like I mattered. I closed the video, not out of pain, but out of certainty. I was done being blindsided. This was no longer about heartbreak. It was business. She turned our marriage into a transaction. So I would treat the fallout like a contract gone wrong. "Anything else you need?" Malik asked when I called to check in again. "I need access to her suite," I said. "Not to break in. Just gather intel." He hesitated. "That's a gray area." She left the door open when she used my name and my card. "I have a right to know what's happening under my account." "I might have a guy," he said slowly. "His name's Kai. Been with me 6 years. Discreet. Loyal. I trust him. Send him in. Quietly. Don't take anything. Just eyes." "You got it." As the plan started to take shape, I began drafting a master document. I titled it Operation Island Exit. It included bank statements, email screenshots, timeline of lies, photos and videos from Malik, spreadsheet from Joan, drafted legal complaint from Tony. All of it stacked neatly into a folder I kept on an encrypted drive. The evidence was clear. The betrayal was proven. But still, I hadn't called her. She had no idea what was coming. That silence? It was my favorite part. Because there's something powerful about letting someone walk deeper into the fire, believing they're in the sun. They sip champagne, post beach photos, smile in the mirror. And all the while, the ground beneath them is starting to crack. By the end of the week, it wouldn't be a beach beneath her feet. It would be a courtroom. The setup. There's something deeply satisfying about watching a liar smile while walking straight into a trap. And in this case, the trap came with ocean views and complimentary mimosas. I landed in Honolulu just before noon on a Friday, stepping off the plane with a single carry-on, dark sunglasses, and a name that wasn't mine. I booked my hotel under an alias, Mr. Hayes, a name I used once for an old fantasy football league. It felt ironic now. That identity, unlike my marriage, was still intact. I didn't stay at Malik's resort. That would have been reckless. Instead, I checked into a boutique hotel just a few blocks away, one of those eco-luxury places where no one asks questions as long as you tip well and look tired. I kept to myself. No loud calls. No public scenes. Just observation, coordination, and silence. Malik met me later that evening at a small cafe near the marina. He wore flip-flops and a linen shirt, blending in with the tourists. Me? I still hadn't changed out of my travel clothes. I wasn't here to relax. "She's still playing the perfect guest," Malik said, sipping his drink. "She booked a couple's kayak tour for tomorrow morning." "With him?" I asked. He nodded. "And they added a spa session for 2 in the afternoon. She's using the card like it prints money. She doesn't suspect a thing? Not a hint. She's floating." I leaned back in my chair, staring out at the docked boats. The setting sun bounced off the water like liquid fire. It should have been romantic. Instead, it felt like a countdown. All right, I said. Let's move forward. Introduce me to your attorney friend. The next morning, Malik set up a quiet meeting with Tony Rivera, a civil attorney whose office overlooked the edge of Diamond Head. She greeted me with a firm handshake and a confidence that made it clear she didn't lose often. I've reviewed the documentation, she said, gesturing to the thick folder I'd provided. You've got solid grounds: financial misconduct, fraudulent use of joint funds, and emotional distress. More importantly, we can file here. But if you wanted to hit harder, we wait until she's mid-trip. Let her think everything's perfect, then drop the hammer. I nodded. Make her feel untouchable. Then remind her she's not. Tony smiled. My kind of client. That afternoon, I returned to my hotel and reviewed the latest batch of updates from Joan. The spreadsheet had grown. More dinners, jewelry, a private snorkel tour. One transaction labeled Lover's Cove Picnic Basket Premium. That one stung. Not because of the money, but because we'd done that same picnic 2 years ago. It had been her idea then. Now, it was recycled romance for someone else. I closed the laptop and called Malik. Time for the next phase, I said. Card switch, he asked. Yes. Can Kai handle it? Kai was Malik's right-hand man. Quiet, unshakable, the kind of guy you could trust to carry secrets to the grave. Malik once said Kai had fixed a blackout during a hurricane with duct tape and a screwdriver. I'll brief him tonight, Malik replied. We'll do it tomorrow morning when she comes down for breakfast. Tell him to be fast, clean, no errors. The plan was simple. Malik would stage a billing issue at the front desk that required Brielle's physical presence. Something like a hold error on the room. While she was down arguing, Kai would enter the suite, swap her real ATM card with an identical dummy, and leave everything else untouched. When she tried to use it later that day, nothing would work. Her picture-perfect vacation would collapse by degrees, each swipe a reminder that control was slipping. By the time the sun rose, everything was in motion. Malik called me around 10 a.m. She's at the desk now, he whispered, giving my staff the fake smile. Is Kai in? Already in and out. Like a ghost. I grinned. Perfect. Later that afternoon, Joan messaged me. No activity on the real card since 10:13 a.m. Looks like the decoy's in full effect. That was the moment I finally felt the shift. The balance tipping. I imagined her standing at the register of some boutique shop, sunglasses in one hand, disappointment curling her lips as the cashier shook their head. Card declined. Swipe again. Declined. Confusion. Embarrassment. Panic. Malik confirmed it. They went to the jewelry store in Waikiki, he said. She tried to buy a gold chain. Got declined. Tried again. Nothing. Levi looked confused. She looked pissed. And now, they're back at the resort. She's on the phone with someone. Probably the bank. Or maybe you. I chuckled. Let her call. I didn't answer, of course. I wasn't ready yet. She had to sit in it longer. But I wasn't done. I crafted a short message on a white piece of paper and sealed it in an envelope. Then I printed one of the clearest screenshots of her kissing Levi on the beach and added it inside. On the paper, I wrote just one line. Smile. You're not on vacation anymore. I handed it to Malik in the lobby that evening. Deliver this to her tomorrow morning. Hand it to her personally. Say it's from a private guest. Then walk away. He turned the envelope over in his hand. She's gonna lose it. That's the point. That night, I returned to my quiet hotel room. I stood by the window, watching the ocean crash against the rocks, and thought about the man I had been just 1 week ago. Blind, tired, trying to fix something that was already broken. Now, I wasn't trying to fix anything. I was just making sure the wreckage had my signature on it. The next morning, Malik called me with a chuckle in his voice. She opened it in the breakfast lounge, he said. Went pale like someone kicked the chair out from under her. Levi asked what it was. She told him it was nothing. Then she stormed off to her suite. I smiled, staring at the rising sun outside my window. Good. She's gonna blow soon, Malik added. She already did, I said calmly. She just doesn't know it yet. I ended the call, finished my coffee, and zipped up my suitcase. It was time to go home, not because I was finished, but because the real show was about to begin. And she still had no idea the cameras were rolling. The card switch. There's a specific kind of silence that follows a perfect setup. It's not empty, it's loaded. Like the air right before a storm breaks, or the hush that settles in a courtroom when the verdict is about to be read. That's the silence I sat in the morning after Malik delivered the envelope. A thick, waiting kind of silence. I didn't rush it. I let the clock do the work. At exactly 11:03 a.m., the first call came through. Brielle. I watched her name flash across my screen. I didn't move. Let it ring. Then another. Then another. I muted the phone and slid it face down across the counter. My hands were steady, my breathing calm. I'd imagined this part for days, the unraveling. But nothing compared to the real-time thrill of watching her world sink slowly beneath her feet. She called 6 more times over the next 2 hours. I didn't pick up. Meanwhile, Joan kept feeding me live updates from the card tracker. Or rather, the lack of them. Declined again. She messaged at 12:12 p.m., this time at a beachside cafe. She tried 3 times. The beautiful thing about revenge done right is that it's not loud. It doesn't slam doors or scream accusations. It whispers truth into places where lies used to live. That's what this card switch was. Not revenge in the classic sense, but revelation. One swipe at a time. Malik texted me mid-afternoon. She's asking everyone at the front desk why her card isn't working. She thinks it's a hotel error. Let her. I replied. I imagined her standing there in that overpriced sundress, trying to smile while confusion bloomed across her face. Levi probably standing nearby, arms crossed, wondering what she was hiding. I wondered if he knew the room they were staying in was booked under my name. If he noticed that every time she signed a receipt, it was with a last name she swore she wasn't proud of anymore. But the best was yet to come. I had prepared a second envelope, this one heavier, thicker, stuffed with truth. Inside, I had placed a printed bank statement, with every line highlighted that matched their trip. A spreadsheet compiled by Joan, organized by date, location, and cost. The resort's room booking confirmation, bearing my full name. A divorce petition drafted by Tony. And finally, a neatly labeled USB drive. That USB? It contained the video footage Malik had collected. Their slow dances. Hand-holding. Laughing under tiki lights. The kiss by the bar. All time-stamped. All in high resolution. This wasn't just evidence, it was a story. A timeline of betrayal, wrapped in facts. And it was about to land directly in her hands. I made one last call to Malik that evening. You sure about this? He asked, though his voice already held the answer. She took a vacation on my dime, I said. She can handle a wake-up call. The next morning, Malik approached her in the hotel lobby, same as before. Mrs. Thorne, he said. I laughed when he told me later she didn't correct him. She was so used to pretending, she forgot to drop the act. This was left for you by a guest, he added, handing her the envelope. She took it without question. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number this time. I didn't answer. Then Malik called. She opened it in the suite, he said. I couldn't see her, but one of the cleaning staff said she threw something against the wall. Then she started shouting. Levi. He left the room 10 minutes later. Looked like someone had slapped him in the face. Did she chase after him? Nope. She slammed the door. He walked down to the pool bar alone. Asked for tequila at 10 a.m. That was almost poetic. I could picture him standing there in his beach shirt, staring out at the waves, suddenly realizing he was just a prop in someone else's mess. That everything she promised him, freedom, love, adventure, was built on stolen money and borrowed names. Later that evening, I got a call from Tony. She's officially been served, she said. Divorce petition, financial claim, and all supporting evidence. We have documentation of receipt. She knows she's been caught. And the lawsuit? Filed. We'll follow up once she returns to the mainland. But based on the footage and your bank records, the case is solid. I thanked her and hung up. That night, I didn't celebrate. I didn't toast a victory or call friends to brag. I just stood on the balcony of my hotel room, watching the tide roll in, listening to the soft hush of the waves meeting sand. I thought about everything. 6 years of marriage. Countless sacrifices. Quiet nights where I stayed up late finishing her pitch decks. The way she used to rest her head on my shoulder when she couldn't sleep. The little things that build a life. And how, one by one, she tore them down for a man who couldn't even pay for his own cocktails. Somewhere down there, in another hotel suite, she was pacing, panicking, scrambling to call banks, lawyers, anyone who would listen. But the truth? No one could help her now. She betrayed the one person who actually would have stood by her. She mistook kindness for weakness. And when she decided to treat our marriage like a game, she forgot one important thing. I never lose when I know the rules. And now? I was the one writing them. By the next morning, she had checked out. Malik texted me. She left in a rush. Didn't speak to anyone. Levi's gone too. Good, I replied. I boarded my return flight that afternoon. No first class. No upgrades. I didn't need luxury. I had peace. And sometimes, that's more valuable than anything money can buy. I sat by the window, watching the clouds shift outside, feeling lighter than I had in months. There were still battles ahead, court dates, settlements, a property division. But the hardest part was over. She'd seen the truth. She'd tasted what it felt like to be powerless. And she'd know, forever, that the man she tried to deceive wasn't the fool she thought he was. He was the one with the final move. The panic call. It was 5:41 a.m. when my phone rang again. I had just returned home the night before, dropped my bag by the door, and walked straight to the shower without turning on a single light. I needed to rinse off Hawaii. Rinse off the smell of betrayal. The lingering sin of ocean wind and lies. I hadn't even unpacked. The suitcase sat untouched by the bedroom wall, and my phone, on silent, buzzed to life on the nightstand. The screen lit up. Brielle. I let it ring. Then again. And again. She called 9 times in less than 20 minutes before I finally picked up. I didn't say a word at first. I just let the weight of the silence reach her through the line. Hello, she said, voice small. I stayed quiet. Where are you? She asked, sounding like she hadn't slept. I finally spoke, my voice calm, even. Back home. There was a pause on her end. I could hear background noise, doors closing, maybe footsteps. She was probably pacing. You're home, she repeated. Why? What's going on? I could almost hear her trying to piece it together, but nothing she'd prepared would have fit what she was walking into. Why is my card not working? She demanded, her voice rising with desperation. Why did it get declined at every store yesterday? I called the bank, and they said there was a freeze on it. Did you do something? Did I do something? I repeated slowly. That's rich. Listen, she began quickly, this whole thing. I know how it looks, but it's not. Don't, I interrupted. She went quiet. I stood at the window of my house, looking out at the neighborhood just beginning to stir. Sprinklers ticked on across lawns. Early joggers passed by with earbuds in, completely unaware that on this call, a marriage was being dissected piece by piece. You told me you were in New York, I said plainly. You packed a suitcase and kissed me goodbye and said you were meeting a client uptown. I was, she lied. You weren't, I said. You were in Hawaii, at my brother's resort, with another man. I heard her inhale sharply. And you used my card, I continued, my voice still low, still cold. Every cocktail, every massage, every dinner, every room service bill, you swiped with my name. You made reservations in my name. You laid in bed with another man, in a suite I paid for. Wait, she said, stumbling over her words. It's not like that. Don't lie again, Brielle. I wasn't trying to hurt you, she snapped, desperation cracking her voice now. It was a mistake. It just happened. You planned the trip. There was silence. You bought the tickets. You forwarded the itinerary to him. You used my funds to do it. That's not a mistake, Brielle. That's a choice. I let that hang in the air. She didn't respond. You don't understand, she finally whispered. I've been feeling lost, alone. You've been distant. You've been working so much. No, I cut in. Don't do that. Don't blame my job. Don't act like loneliness is a permission slip for betrayal. You could have talked to me. You could have told me something wasn't right. Instead, you packed a bag, smiled in my face, and flew to paradise to play house with someone else. There was no defense. She knew it. Her voice broke. Please. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far. It just got complicated. I was confused. You weren't confused when you booked a luxury suite. You weren't confused when you bought him a necklace with my card. She gasped. How do you know that? I know everything, I said. Every charge. Every location. Every video. Every lie. She was completely silent now. You really thought you'd get away with it? I asked. You thought I'd sit here while you dipped into our account and took a vacation with someone else? She stammered. I needed something different. I didn't plan on hurting you. I swear. I still love you. I almost laughed. No, Brielle, I said. You love what I gave you. The stability. The money. The image. You loved the version of me that didn't know what you were doing. She cried then. Quietly. I didn't interrupt. I didn't comfort. I don't know what to do, she said between sobs. I made a mistake. You'll get a package by 9 a.m., I said calmly. What? In your suite. Courtesy of the hotel manager. Open it. Read everything inside. Then pack your things and check out. You'll be flying home alone. She sniffled. What's in it? Reality, I said. Something you've been avoiding. I can fix this, she pleaded. Please. I know I hurt you, but I'll do anything. Just tell me how to make this right. You can't, I said. This isn't about hurt anymore. It's about who you chose to be when you thought I wasn't watching. But I didn't mean to fall for him, she whispered. And there it was. The truth. I didn't even flinch. Brielle, I said slowly. You chose him. You booked the flight. You packed the bags. You shared the bed. You used my card to fund the fantasy. That's not something that just happens. That's effort. That's intention. Silence. And then the smallest voice I had ever heard from her. I'm scared. You should be. The line was quiet for a long time. I could hear her breathing. Maybe she thought I'd soften. Maybe she thought I'd say, come home, or we'll figure this out. But I'd figured it out already. And she no longer had a place in it. I have to go, I said. Wait. But I hung up. I stood in the quiet of the house for a long while after that. The walls felt a little wider. The air, a little clearer. Like the house had been holding its breath too, and now it was free to exhale. I went downstairs, brewed a fresh cup of coffee, and took it out onto the porch. The sky was turning gold. Birds chirped in the trees. For the first time in a long time, I felt still. No more guessing. No more wondering. Just truth. I didn't need to yell or scream to win. All I had to do was stop pretending she was someone she never intended to be. And soon, when she opened that package, she'd realize just how much pretending had cost her. The envelope of consequences. The sun rose in Honolulu like it always did, calm, golden, promising. But for Brielle, this morning was going to be different. I imagined her waking up in the luxury suite, the ocean breeze slipping through the curtains, the faint sound of waves in the distance. For a moment, maybe she even forgot everything. Maybe she reached for Levi. Maybe she still hoped this was just a bad dream. But dreams don't come with documents. At exactly 9 a.m., Malik followed through on our agreement. He walked up to the suite, knocked twice, and handed her a second envelope, this one thicker than the last. He didn't say a word, just smiled politely, turned around, and walked away. Inside that envelope was the end of everything she thought she had control over. The divorce petition was printed on crisp, white paper with bold lettering and Tony's law firm's insignia at the top. It detailed every violation of trust, every financial abuse, every legal reason I had for terminating the marriage. No fluff, just facts. Alongside that, I had included a formal restraining order against her access to all joint accounts, investments, and property titles. Tony's team had frozen everything. The house, the cars, the business assets. Brielle now had no access to anything we had built together. Also included was a breakdown, a full spreadsheet, color-coded, labeled, with every single dollar she had spent using my name. There were receipts from the resort, restaurants, designer stores, and even gas stations. Each row was a nail in the coffin. Joan had done an exceptional job organizing it all, and it looked less like a document and more like a prosecution case file. But what truly mattered, the thing that would take her breath away, was the final item in the envelope. A small black USB drive, neatly labeled. Inside the USB was the footage. For separate clips, each captured with date and timestamps from Malik's security system. There was no ambiguity, no grainy, low-resolution blur to dispute. The kiss under the tiki lights, the hand on her thigh at the poolside lounge, the giggling as she leaned on Levi during the luau, the way she leaned into his neck as they walked back to the suite at night. It was all there. And he, Levi, was just as exposed. That's the part she hadn't thought through. He worked for a firm in San Diego. Brielle once told me it was conservative, uptight, known for firing employees over office romances and inappropriate social behavior. She never thought I'd find out. Never thought Malik would track the footage. Never imagined I'd take it this far. But I had. Because love wasn't the point anymore. Dignity was. I got a call from Malik about 30 minutes after he delivered the envelope. You're not going to believe what just happened, he said, half laughing. Try me, I replied. She came down to the lobby in a fury, holding the envelope like it had bitten her. Demanded to speak to management. Then she demanded to speak to me. And I asked. I met her outside the main doors, he said. She started yelling, asking if I was working with you. She said it was invasion of privacy. I let her talk. Smart. Then Levi came out. He looked shaken. I think he saw the video. I leaned back in my chair. He knows. Oh, yeah. His face said it all. He wasn't furious. He was terrified. Probably realized the kind of fallout he's about to walk into. Good. They argued right there, in front of everyone, Malik said. She said something about fixing it. He said something about lawyers. Then he just walked off. Didn't even wait for her. That part didn't surprise. She had traded 6 years of real for 6 days of illusion. And now she was left holding an envelope full of truths and a name no one wanted to be associated with. Later that day, I received an email from Tony's assistant. Everything had been filed. The claims were active. The documents had been notarized and verified. I now had legal separation pending trial in a strong financial misconduct case. And the startup I helped Brielle launch? I had already removed her from the accounts. Back when we set up the LLC, she didn't pay attention to the fine print. I had retained majority control with 60% equity, standard protection in case she ever wanted to sell early. I never thought I'd use it this way, but now it felt like insurance. I sent a notice of removal to her business email that evening. Effective immediately, she was out. No longer CEO, no longer partner, no longer tied to anything I built. The final blow came when Malik told me Levi's company had received a forwarded copy of the video. Not by me, of course not. But someone anonymous, someone who simply labeled the email, thought your HR department might want to see this. I didn't have to ask who sent it. Joan. She always did have a flair for timing. By that night, the fallout was in full swing. I stayed up reading a book I'd been trying to finish for months. Something about quiet resilience and rebuilding after a storm. Funny how I understood it better now. My phone buzzed once more. A text from an unknown number. Please. Can we talk? Just once. Please. I didn't respond. Because what was there left to say? She had poured gasoline on our life and lit the match, thinking I wouldn't notice the smoke. But now, she was choking on the fumes. She had lied to my face, spent my money, kissed another man under my brother's roof, and thought all she had to do was cry her way out of it. Not this time. I walked out onto the balcony, breathing in the cool night air, letting it settle in my lungs. There was no need for revenge anymore. I'd already won. Not through rage. Not through violence. Through evidence. Through calm. Through the truth. Let people call me cold. Let them say I overreacted. Because in the end, she tried to write me out of the story we built together. But I held the pen, and she just got edited out. Grounded and exposed. When I stepped off the plane back home, I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel angry either. What I felt, oddly enough, was quiet. A kind of stillness that settled in my chest like dust after a storm. I wasn't coming home from a war. I was coming home from a revelation. And the man who had left just a week ago wasn't the same man walking into this house now. I took my time walking through the front door. Everything was exactly as I left it. The shoes neatly by the door. The vase with dried lavender still sitting untouched on the dining table. But the energy had changed. It was no longer our house. It was mine. Completely, irrevocably mine. Before I even unpacked, I did what needed to be done. First, I changed the locks. A locksmith came within the hour. I didn't explain why. I didn't need to. The man simply did the job, took the payment, and nodded before leaving me standing with a brand new set of keys and a fresh bolt on the past. Next, I contacted my bank and finalized the financial separation. Our joint accounts were already frozen, thanks to Tony, but now I made it permanent. No more access. No more loopholes. Every dime was accounted for, every transaction traced. I wasn't just protecting myself, I was securing peace. Then I cleared the house. Not of furniture or memories, just of her. Everything that belonged to Brielle, her clothes, shoes, makeup, books, favorite mugs, even her yoga mat, I boxed up and stored in the garage. I didn't throw anything out. That would have been too easy. Instead, I put it all neatly into labeled bins, and I left a simple note on top. Collected. Categorized. Claimed. You can coordinate pickup through your attorney. I didn't need her setting foot back inside. She had already stomped enough mud through the floorboards of my trust. 3 days later, the doorbell rang. It was a courier with a stack of papers, signed responses from her legal team. She wasn't fighting the divorce. Not directly. Not yet. But the tone of the reply was careful, curated, designed to slow things down. Too late for that. The next morning, she flew back. Alone. Malik had texted me the moment she checked out. She's leaving today. First class. No Levi. I didn't respond. I didn't need to, but I knew the storm was about to move from Hawaii to here. Sure enough, by mid-afternoon, there she was, standing at the front door like someone who forgot they no longer lived here. She had sunglasses on, her hair pulled back in a tight ponytail, and that same duffel bag she'd taken to Hawaii slung over her shoulder like nothing had changed. She rang the bell twice. I watched her from the upstairs hallway monitor. I didn't rush. I let her stand there. Let her feel the weight of waiting. Then I pressed the intercom button. Brielle. She looked around, confused. Can you open the door? This property is no longer shared, I said evenly. You'll receive further instructions through your attorney. Her face changed immediately. Wait, what? Are you serious right now? I flew back to fix this. You flew back alone, I said. That was your first clue. She stepped closer to the door. Please, just let me in. We can talk. There's nothing to talk about. Come on, you don't mean that. You said you needed space. You took it. In Hawaii. With another man. That was a mistake. No, I interrupted. It was a pattern. I paused. You broke this, Brielle. Not just once. Not just with one kiss. You made a decision every single day of that trip. And now, you're facing the cost. She was visibly shaking. People make mistakes. People do, I agreed. But not everyone betrays the person who gave them everything. The silence that followed was heavy. Then her voice cracked. The neighbors are staring. I looked down from the window. Sure enough, across the street, old Mrs. Callahan had paused mid-sprinkler. A man jogging with his dog slowed to glance over. Even the mailman took a second look before heading back to his van. I'm not the one who should be embarrassed, I said. You made this public the moment you tried to hide it. Her lips trembled. You really hate me now, don't you? No, I replied. Hate takes too much energy. And I'm done giving you mine. I ended the intercom call. She stood there for another 30 seconds. Then she walked to the curb, where her Uber was still waiting, and climbed in without looking back. That evening, her parents called. I debated whether to answer. But curiosity got the better of me. Hello, I said. There was a moment of hesitation. Hi, her mother said, her voice tightly wound. We heard about everything. We just wanted to hear your side. You want my side? Yes, her father added. Brielle's upset. She says it wasn't what it looked like. It never is, I said. Well? She went to Hawaii with another man. She used my bank card. She booked the suite under my name. She lied to all of us. If you're looking for someone to feel sorry for, I'm not him. There was a long silence. I'm sorry, her mother said finally. We didn't know. No, I replied. You just didn't ask. I hung up. I didn't owe them closure. Not when they'd spent 6 years turning a blind eye to the cracks she caused and calling them character. That night, I sat on the back patio with a glass of water and watched the sky turn orange. The same sky we used to sit under together, laughing at silly TV shows and dreaming about our future. Now, I sat under it alone, and for the first time, it didn't feel empty. It felt earned. The house was no longer filled with tension. No walking on eggshells. No late-night text I wasn't supposed to see. No phone calls that ended the second I stepped into the room. Just silence. And silence, when it's finally honest, is the loudest kind of peace. I walked back inside, past the row of labeled boxes in the garage, and shut the door behind me. She had returned home thinking she could fix it with words. But some bridges burn so clean, there's nothing left to walk across. The final confrontation. A month later, I stood in the hallway outside courtroom 4B, dressed in a charcoal gray suit, holding nothing but a leather folder and calm resolve. The hallway buzzed quietly, shuffling feet, muffled conversations, the occasional call for silence. But all of it faded to a dull murmur as I stood by the bench, waiting for her. Brielle arrived 5 minutes late. She looked nothing like the woman who had stepped onto a Hawaiian beach in a sundress and sunglasses. Today, she wore a navy skirt suit, her hair pulled tight into a bun, as heavy with something between regret and stubbornness. Beside her was a sharp-looking attorney with an expensive briefcase and the kind of practiced smirk that only existed in courtrooms and overpriced divorce settlements. She didn't make eye contact. I didn't care. My attorney, Tony, stood beside me with quiet confidence, flipping through documents like she already knew how this would end. When the clerk called our case, we entered the courtroom and sat across from each other at 2 separate tables. The judge was a middle-aged woman with a steel gaze and a reputation for disliking unnecessary drama. Exactly who I'd hoped for. Tony opened with a calm summary of the case, financial misconduct, betrayal of marital trust, fraudulent use of shared assets. She spoke clearly, backed by dates, receipts, bank statements, and video footage we'd submitted into sealed evidence. Brielle's lawyer tried to counter with emotional appeals. "Your Honor," he said, "my client acknowledges that mistakes were made. But this was not a calculated attempt to harm her husband. This was the result of emotional distance in the marriage. My client felt isolated, neglected, and alone. She acted irrationally, yes, but not maliciously." Brielle lowered her eyes, like the weight of those words was hard to carry. The judge didn't blink. Tony rose smoothly. "Your Honor, feeling neglected doesn't justify using your spouse's identity and financial accounts to fund an adulterous vacation. My client has presented proof of premeditation, booking details, duplicate reservations, and video footage showing sustained romantic engagement with another man. This was not spontaneous. This was a pattern." The judge nodded, flipping through the documents. Then she turned to Brielle. "Mrs. Thorne, do you deny traveling to Hawaii with another man using your husband's financial information?" Brielle looked up, her voice barely audible. "No, Your Honor." "Do you deny that the room, the meals, and the gifts were charged to your husband's account without his consent?" Again, "No, Your Honor." "Do you deny that during this trip, you portrayed yourself as unmarried on official travel documents submitted to the resort and tour companies?" Her attorney tried to speak, but the judge raised a hand. "I'd like to hear it from her." Brielle hesitated, then shook her head. "I don't deny it." The judge nodded and leaned back in her chair. "Thank you." Tony stood again and handed over the final exhibit, my written statement. The judge read it silently for a moment before placing it aside. Then it was my turn. "Would you like to say anything?" the judge asked. I stood, buttoned my jacket, and walked slowly to the witness platform. I didn't look at Brielle. Not once. My eyes stayed forward, my voice even. I was married for 6 years to a woman I thought I knew. I supported her through grad school, paid off her debts, helped launch her business. I built our life carefully, brick by brick. And one day, without warning, she took a sledgehammer to all of it and smiled like it was self-care. A few people in the gallery shifted. I continued. She planned a trip with another man. She lied to my face. She used our joint funds, my money, to finance a vacation she called a business trip. She bought jewelry for someone else while pretending to be someone else. She committed financial betrayal and emotional abandonment, all in one act. I paused. And when she got caught, she didn't apologize. She didn't come home and confess. She panicked because the fantasy fell apart. I finally turned my head slightly, just enough to glance at her. "You had 6 years to make things work," I said softly. "You chose a 5-day trip over a lifetime." I stepped back, nodded to the judge, and returned to my seat. The room was still. The judge adjusted her glasses, glanced at the stack of evidence once more, and gave her ruling. "The court finds the evidence overwhelmingly in favor of the petitioner," she said firmly. "The divorce is granted effective immediately. The house, bank assets, and startup business will be awarded to the petitioner in full. Additionally, the respondent will be required to repay $7,200 in misused funds, as documented." Brielle's lawyer tried to argue for reduced repayment. The judge cut him off. "This is not a trial for emotional debate. The law is clear. Fraud has consequences." Brielle's shoulders sagged. She didn't speak. Outside the courtroom, I waited for a moment near the elevators. Not for her, but because Tony had stepped into the hall to take a call, and I needed to sign one last form. Brielle eventually approached. Alone. I glanced at her. She looked tired. Not the tired of missing sleep, but the tired that comes from carrying a story that finally collapsed. "Can I say something?" she asked. "You just did." "In court." She frowned. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." I turned toward her fully. "That's the problem," I said. "You never meant for anything. You just let things happen, until you couldn't hide them anymore." "I was confused," she said weakly. "No, you were dishonest. I thought maybe after some time." "There's no after, Brielle." She looked down, as if expecting that. Her voice was small again. "Did you ever love me?" I didn't flinch. "I did. Completely. And you turned it into paperwork." Her eyes welled up, but I didn't comfort her. That time was gone. She opened her mouth to say something else, but I stepped past her as the elevator dinged. Tony returned, handed me the signed file, and we left. I didn't look back. That evening, I opened a bottle of wine and stood on my balcony again. The wind had picked up. The air had shifted. Somewhere down the road, Brielle would tell her version of the story. Maybe to friends. Maybe to someone new. Maybe even to herself. But I didn't care anymore. Because the story that mattered, the one with the truth, the proof, and the clean break, was finished. I had walked into court with facts and walked out with freedom. No screaming. No slamming doors. No dramatic exits. Just the quiet sound of closure. And the knowledge that I had rebuilt what she tried to tear down, with dignity intact. My life, rewritten. It's funny how peace doesn't come with fanfare. It doesn't knock on your door with balloons or announce itself like a grand entrance. It comes quietly, softly, like a breeze drifting through an open window, reminding you that the storm is gone. That's how I felt waking up in my new apartment for the first time. The sun filtered through the blinds, casting golden stripes across the hardwood floor. My dog, yes, I finally got one, was curled up at the foot of the bed, snoring softly. He was a rescue, a stubborn little mutt named Milo who liked to hog the blankets and bark at his reflection in the mirror. Somehow, his presence made the space feel lived in, real. Like I wasn't just existing, I was healing. The apartment wasn't big. One bedroom, one office, open kitchen. But everything in it was mine. Every item I brought in had meaning. The framed photos on the shelf were of friends, travels, and family. No wedding pictures. No half-hearted smiles. Just me, in all the honest moments that never required performance. A few weeks after the court hearing, I officially moved out of the house Brielle and I once shared. I didn't fight to keep it, even though the judge had awarded it to me. I didn't want to live in a museum of broken memories. I sold it. Got a good offer, too. Young couple, newly married, excited to start their life together. I let them have it. Let them fill the space with hope instead of history. Brielle didn't contest the sale. She barely said anything after the ruling. And I got back to living. I started biking again on Sundays, the way I used to before I met her. Just me and the wind, riding along the river trails with no destination, no schedule. I found new coffee shops, met neighbors, took cooking classes on Thursday nights because, for the first time in years, I didn't have to worry about someone else's preferences. I didn't check her social media, didn't scroll through tagged photos, trying to see who she was with or what excuse she was giving the world. That chapter was closed. Reading it again wouldn't change the ending. Malik and I talk more now. The whole ordeal had brought us closer than years of birthdays and holidays ever did. We laughed about things now, small details that had once stung. You should have seen her face when the envelope landed, he'd said once over a call. Like someone handed her a live grenade. He came to visit a few weeks later. We grabbed dinner, sat on the rooftop of a local restaurant, and just talked. No tension, no rushed updates. Just two brothers who had been through something ugly and came out stronger for it. "You're different," he said, sipping his beer. "Better or worse?" "Better," he replied. "You look lighter. Like you're finally breathing." I nodded. "Feels that way too." Then there was Tony. What started as a purely professional connection had slowly grown into something I didn't expect. We stayed in touch after the case ended, initially about paperwork, then about life. One evening, we met for drinks at a quiet bar downtown. She looked different out of court, more relaxed, warmer. Her sharpness was still there, but it was softened by genuine curiosity. She asked how I was doing, not in the way people do to be polite, but like she really wanted to know. "I'm learning to be selfish again," I told her. She smiled. "Good. You earned that." By the end of the night, I realized I hadn't thought about Brielle once. Not her lies. Not the videos. Not the voice that once convinced me she'd never hurt me. Just me, and the woman sitting across from me, sipping wine and laughing without pretense. It didn't turn into something overnight. I didn't dive into a rebound or force myself into romance. I let it unfold the way healing should, slow, steady, respectful. Maybe it becomes something more. Maybe it doesn't. But for once, I was okay with the uncertainty. One Saturday morning, I visited the place I used to sit with Brielle on our good days and overlook that faced the city skyline, tucked behind a quiet park. I sat alone on the bench, watching the wind carry leaves across the path. I thought about everything she took from me, and everything I took back. She took my trust. I reclaimed it through boundaries. She took my finances. I rebuilt with intention. She took my dignity. I answered her betrayal with grace, strategy, and silence. People often say that revenge is best served cold, but I disagree. The best revenge is living a life so complete, so unapologetically peaceful, that the person who tried to destroy you ends up haunted by how little they mattered in the long run. Brielle had called me once, weeks after the court decision. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail on Neverly. You were part of my good karma streak, she said, laughing. Helping you gave me purpose again. You saved me, I told her. No, she replied, you saved yourself. I just handed you the flashlight. I thought about that for a long time after we hung up. Because she was right. I could have chosen anger. I could have destroyed everything in my path just to feel powerful again. But instead, I chose clarity. I built spreadsheets, not shouting matches. I chose courtrooms, not chaos. I chose dignity when I had every right to explode. And because of that, I didn't just survive the betrayal, I redefined myself through it. Now, when people ask me what happened between us, I don't tell the whole story. I don't list the lies, the expenses, or the beach photos. I just say this. She left thinking she found better. I stayed and found peace. And that's enough. Because I don't owe the world an explanation for how I healed. I only owe myself the truth of what I endured and the pride of how I overcame it. So here I am, 39, divorced, rebuilding, and happier than I ever was in that marriage. Some people chase beaches while burning bridges. Me? I've learned to build on solid ground. No more borrowed trust. No more forced smiles. No more fake forever. Just me, my dog, a skyline view, and the quiet certainty that I will never let someone write me out of my own story again. Not even for paradise.